Come closer, wise man, and take a deep breath. Set aside the rush of the day. Stop jumping from one video to another and sit by my side as one who enters the gardens of the palace to hear counsel both ancient and ever new. I welcome you as a friend, and I speak with the calm of one who has already measured the weight of days and knows the firmness of the Lord. Today we will deal with a silent enemy that steals decisions, opportunities, and rest. I speak of fear that governs choices and imprisons the heart, while trust in the Most High raises invisible walls and sustains steady steps. Let us open the Bible in Proverbs chapter 29, from verse 25 to 27. I myself wrote that, "The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe." I also said that many run after the favor of the powerful, but it is from the Lord that just decisions come. And I concluded by showing that the righteous and the corrupt do not walk under the same light. For he who loves righteousness abhors wickedness, and the wicked is troubled by the integrity of the righteous. What I meant here is simple and profound at the same time. When the fear of people dictates your steps, you are trapped in snares you cannot see. But when you lean on the Lord, you are placed on high ground, and no human pressure defines your destiny. Receive then the principle of our journey today. Fear that governs is a spiritual and financial prison. Trust in the Lord is security that orders the steps and opens the paths of true prosperity. I am not speaking of empty boldness, nor of bravado that confuses courage with recklessness. I speak of a trust that is born of the fear of God, that adjusts the conscience, sets limits to desire, and gives clarity in cloudy days. If you are a wise man, your path requires decisions that do not bow to the terror of criticism, nor to the brightness of applause. If you are a man who fears God, your heart must learn to rest when all around you are running without knowing where to. I want to explain to you how we will walk together. I will intersperse the reading of the scriptures, practical reflections, and moments of prayer and fellowship. Each counsel will touch your work and your discipline, your management and your honesty, your generosity and your diligence. It is an entire path of applied wisdom, not a handful of scattered phrases. As I read, I will show you the why of each word and the how of each step. Thus the word will not remain distant. It will enter your craft, your table, your contracts, your dealings with your own, and the silence of your decisions. Before we advance, prepare your heart for immersion. For I will speak to you as if I were King Solomon himself. I will take authority in my speech, so you may feel the weight of the words of one who wrote these proverbs, who measured the joy and vanity of the things under the sun, and learned that all prosperity without righteousness is mist. Do not be surprised by my tone. It is so that your experience here may be rich and unique. For it is from father to son, from friend to friend, from king to one who has been called to govern himself. I want you to feel that I am near, that my words touch you at the very point where fear has laid its nets, and that with the help of the Most High, we may undo these snares one by one. Let us pray for a moment. Father of all wisdom, now open the mind of this man who fears you and steady his heart in your truth. Deliver him from the invisible threads of fear, break the snares that made him retreat, and give him the courage that is born of the fear of the Lord. Grant him light to discern the right path, strength to fulfill the just duty, and peace to lie down without alarm. May this word pierce thought and intention and bear fruit that remains. Amen. If these words are already edifying you, show your commitment to continue learning. Leave your like on this video and subscribe to the channel, not out of vanity, but as a public sign that you are sitting at the table of wisdom and want to continue on this path. Thus we remain together, and I will continue delivering daily counsel that strengthens the wise man amid pressures, and that fortifies you when the night is long. Unmasking fear. From root to cure. I want to begin this counsel by asking you to open the word with me in Proverbs chapter 3, verses 21 through 26. There I myself taught, Keep sound wisdom and discretion. Do not let them out of your sight, for they will be life to your soul and adornment for your neck. Then you will walk with confidence in your way, and your foot will not stumble. Do not be afraid of sudden terror, nor of the ruin that comes upon the wicked, for the Lord will be your confidence and will keep your foot from being caught. What I meant, man who fears God, is that wisdom preserves your heart and sustains you against fear. No matter the shock that arises on the path, when your trust is in the Most High, your steps remain steady. It is like a city surrounded by walls. Even if enemies rise suddenly, the inner fortress of the wise man keeps him secure. Now let me also open Ecclesiastes chapter 7 verses 2 through 4. There I wrote that it is better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. For this is the end of all mankind, and the living should take it to heart. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. And further on in chapter 12 verse 13, I summed up life saying, the end of the matter is this: fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of every man. Wise man, what I wanted to teach is that reflecting on death is not meaningless sadness. It is remembering that time is short and that choices must be anchored in the fear of the Lord. When the heart understands its finitude, it becomes ordered, gains priority, and does not let itself be governed by fear. It is like one who looks at the sand in the hourglass and realizes that every grain is precious. When you know you do not control the days, you learn to invest your time in what truly remains. I also want you to hear what is written in Song of Songs, chapter 8, verses 6 and 7. I declared, set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your arm. For love is as strong as death, jealousy as fierce as the grave. Its flashes are flashes of fire, a most vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, nor can floods drown it. I said this so you would understand that the love of God seals the heart. When that seal is upon you, neither death nor fear can dominate your steps. It is this love that conquers the anxiety of tomorrow and strengthens your decision to live with courage today. The man who fears God and knows he is loved carries within himself a fire that cannot be extinguished. Neither the waters of trials nor the waves of uncertainty can put out that seal. It is like a mark engraved in the deepest part. When the love of God is root, fear cannot grow. Fear, man who fears God, has many faces. There is the physiological fear, which is natural and serves as an alert when real danger approaches. But there is also the imaginary fear, which arises from what has not yet happened, born of projecting the unknown. This fear grows when you do not discipline yourself. However, repeating an action, even when done with apprehension, dissolves the strength of that fear. The first time it shouts, the second time it whispers, the fifth time it is barely heard. I myself said in Proverbs chapter 25 verse 28, whoever has no self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. In other words, without discipline and repetition, your life is exposed. But when you persevere, fear dissipates like a shadow before the light. It is like training the muscles of your soul. With each repetition, the strength increases, and what seemed a mountain reveals itself to be only a passing shadow. I also remember the lesson of the ant. In Proverbs chapter 6 verses 6 through 8, I said, go to the ant, you sluggard. Observe its ways and be wise. It has no commander, no overseer, no ruler, yet it prepares its bread in summer and gathers its food at harvest. Do you see what this teaches? When you prepare in advance, the fear of the unknown loses its strength. Diligence becomes an inner wall, and discipline turns into security against uncertainty. The wise man who anticipates the seasons no longer fears the coming of winter, for he knows there is bread in the storehouse and oil in the jar. Fear finds no place in one who has built reserves with consistency. But it is not only individual discipline that overcomes fear. The environment in which you dwell also nourishes or weakens the heart. I will read to you in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If one falls, the other lifts up his companion. But woe to him who is alone when he falls, for he has no one to lift him up. And if someone prevails against one, two will withstand him. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. And also in Proverbs chapter 27 verses 17 through 19 I taught, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Whoever tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who guards his master will be honored. This means that your relationships shape your spirit. If you surround your life with men dominated by fear, dread spreads. But if you walk with men who are steady, who watch and trust in the Lord, your courage is strengthened. Just as a sword loses its edge if kept alone, but stays sharp when it meets another blade, so the wise man needs the healthy friction of brothers who challenge him. See the example from the days of Gideon. In Judges chapter 7, it is written that the Lord reduced Israel's army to just 300 vigilant men, so that the victory would come not by numbers, but by faith and strategy. What we learn, wise man, is that courageous alliances are more valuable than fearful crowds. If in your business and projects you keep at your side only those who tremble, defeat is already announced. But if you select companions who are attentive, vigilant, and who fear the Lord, you will win even with few. Better a small faithful troop than an uncertain multitude. For fear spreads faster than courage, but true faith can turn impossible battles. Therefore I tell you, filter your circles, remove the fearful from your critical works, and build partnerships of accountability. For wisdom does not walk alone. It builds alliances that sustain and encourage. And so fear finds no place to grow. The man who fears God knows he was not called to live in isolation, but to build together, to be strengthened, and to strengthen others. It is in fellowship that faith matures, in sharing that courage is renewed, in alliance that victory is confirmed. Wise man, before we proceed, I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. What fear has tried to govern your decisions? Name it in your heart and lay it before the Lord. Now go down to the comments and write which area of your life needs more courage. It could be in your work, your finances, or even in the silence of your mind. And as you read what others have written, leave a word of encouragement as well. In this way, we build together a brotherhood of men who lift one another up and do not allow fear to reign in their paths. This practice of declaring and edifying one another is also a way to break the silence that fear produces. For fear silences, but faith confesses. Fear isolates, but faith shares. Plant courage, mind, identity, and planning. Let us now open in Proverbs chapter 4 from verses 20 to 27. There I myself advised, my son, incline your ears to my words, keep them deep in your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and health to all their body. Above all that must be guarded, guard your heart, for from it flow the springs of life. Put away from you deceitful speech, and keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead, fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. What I wanted to teach here is that your mind is like a garden. Every word that enters is like a seed. If you guard wisdom, life bloom. But if you welcome fear and lies, thorns will grow that choke out hope. And a garden does not flourish by chance, it requires daily care. The heart of the man who fears God must be cultivated with prayer, with the word, and with discipline, or else the weeds of fear will silently take over. Picture your mind as a piece of fertile ground. When someone throws a seed, sooner or later, it sprouts. If you allow other men to throw seeds of fear, soon your field will be covered with plants you did not choose. But if you yourself decide to sow the word and truth, you will see the fruit of courage grow. That is why I tell you, wise man, guard the gates of your heart. Watch your eyes and ears, because what enters today will be the harvest of tomorrow. Do not allow mockers or anxious voices to dictate what will grow in your field. Plant daily seeds of trust and of the fear of God, and the harvest will be peace and prosperity. Just as the farmer who returns every day to the same field to water, pull weeds, and protect the seed, so too you must constantly return to your heart. It is not enough to plant once, you must watch so that nothing steals the harvest. Now let us open Song of Songs, chapter 1, verses 5 to 7. There I said, I am dark, but lovely, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because the sun has burnt me. My mother's sons were angry with me. They made me take care of the vineyards, but my own vineyard I neglected. What I wanted to show is that every man needs to take care of his own vineyard. That is his identity, his essence, his mission. Man who fears God, do not surrender your joy to the gaze of others. Do not live off applause, nor destroy yourself with criticism. In Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verses 21 and 22, I also advised, do not pay attention to every word people say, or you may hear your servant cursing you. For your heart knows that many times you yourself have cursed others. In other words, do not be a slave to the opinion of others, nor to your own guilt. The vineyard represents the personal life, the soul, and the mission God entrusted to you. Many men exhaust themselves guarding others' vineyards, worried about pleasing but forget to guard their own. And when they realize it, their essence is already weakened. Wise man, I want you to understand this. Your identity in God must be firm. If you fall into the funeral of human cancellation, remember, no one can bury you if you do not lie down yourself. Rise up, lift your head, and walk. For as long as you depend on people's recognition, you will be vulnerable to fear. But when your trust is firm in the Lord, no criticism can steal your peace. It is like an invisible shield. Arrows may be shot, but they do not pierce the heart of one who already knows who he is in God. A firm identity is like a deep root. Storms may come, winds may blow, but the tree remains standing. Let us now open Proverbs chapter 21, verses 5 to 8. I taught, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but haste leads to poverty. The man who uses deceit amasses illusory treasures, but he who sows righteousness will reap a sure reward. What I wanted to teach here is that courage is not recklessness. It is the firmness to plan, to chart routes, to measure risks, and to walk with honesty. The man who fears God does not throw himself into ventures that may ruin him. Instead, he builds with method and prudence, knowing that honest work is the foundation of lasting prosperity. Planning is not a lack of faith. It is precisely the practice of faith that organizes life to reap what God has promised. In Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 1 to 6, I declared, cast your bread upon the waters, for after many days you will find it. Give portions to 7, yes to 8, for you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. Whoever watches the wind will not plant. Whoever looks at the clouds will not reap. Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let not your hands be idle, for you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. And in chapter 10, verse 10, I said, if the axe is dull and its edge unsharpened, more strength is needed, but skill will bring success. What all this means is that you cannot wait for perfect conditions to act. Whoever keeps watching the wind never plants, but you must also not strike without sharpening the axe. Balance is the mark of the wise man. He plants even in uncertain days, but he prepares his tools with patience before using them. And this is a precious lesson. Courage is not closing your eyes and jumping, but seeing clearly, measuring the step, and still walking with determination. Remember also what I wrote in Proverbs chapter 27, verses 23 to 27. Be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds, for riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations. When the hay is removed and new growth appears, and the grass from the hills is gathered in, the lambs will provide you with clothing, and the goats with the price of a field. You will have plenty of goat's milk to feed your family and to nourish your female servants. What I wanted to teach here is care, attentive administration, It is not enough to acquire, you must preserve. True prosperity does not endure without attentive eyes and responsible hands. Many think only of conquering, but neglect what they already have. And wealth is lost more by carelessness than by lack of opportunities. That is why I also wrote in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11, "Whoever works his land will have abundant food, but he who chases fantasies lacks judgment." And in chapter 28, verse 19, I repeated, "He who works his land will have abundant food, but whoever chases fantasies will have his fill of poverty." In other words, wise man, you do not build prosperity on empty dreams. It is in the faithful sweat of each day that the harvest comes. Work your land, fulfill your deadlines, set weekly goals before the Lord. Diversify tasks, check contracts, and prepare reserves. Thus, you will build a solid life, one that withstands time and storms. True prosperity does not rise on sandcastles, but on foundations of continuous effort and the fear of God. The sisters of fear, closing the breaches. Wise man, there are enemies that do not come with shouts, but hide in small gestures. They are the sisters of fear, those silent companions that consume time, drain energy, and steal prosperity. I want to name them before you, so that they no longer deceive you. Inertia, procrastination, disorganization, omission, negativity, murmuring, uncertainty, lying, excuses, and loneliness. All of them are born or grow from fear, and all of them take you away from the path that God has prepared for you. When one of them finds shelter in your life, a breach is opened that weakens the wall of your prosperity. In Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 15, I wrote, "Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, for our vineyards are in bloom." What I meant to show is that great ruins rarely begin with great acts of destruction, but with small concessions that seem harmless, the cursed word repeated in secret, the delay always postponed, the omission that pretends peace but sows disorder. These are the little foxes that consume marriages, destroy teams, impoverish businesses, and suffocate dreams. God-fearing man, your responsibility is to hunt down these foxes while they are still small. For if they grow, they become wolves that can no longer be controlled. I want to begin with laziness and delay. In Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 to 11, I taught, "Go to the ant, O sluggard, consider her ways and be wise." Having no chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. So shall your poverty come upon you like a robber, and your want like an armed man. What I meant to teach here is that inertia is the eldest sister of all the others. It opens the door for procrastination to reign, for disorganization to pile up, for omission to seem normal. The wise man cannot afford to sleep during the harvest, for time does not wait for those who delay. If this word is making sense to you, leave your like right now on the video and join this community of men who seek wisdom by subscribing to the channel. I need to know that I am serving you well, and that the seeds I sow here are sprouting in your heart as a God-fearing man. Let us continue. Still in Proverbs chapter 10, verses 4 and 5, I said, "A slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest brings shame." This means that those who postpone important tasks become a shame not only to themselves, but to their family and community. God-fearing man, if you do not break the cycle of procrastination, the fear of failure will continue feeding excuses, and each excuse will be a brick in an invisible prison. But if you rise with discipline, breaking inertia even with 5 minutes of effort, fear begins to lose ground. Now consider disorganization and omission. In Proverbs chapter 27, verses 23 to 27, I already read to you that you must know well the state of your flocks and pay attention to your herds, for riches do not last forever. This principle is even more urgent when we speak of administration. Many men, out of fear of confronting problems, remain silent before mistakes in their homes and businesses. And because of this silence, they lose 10% or more of their resources in simple oversights, in contracts never reviewed, in expenses never monitored. Omission, wise man, is fear dressed in passivity. And every time you omit yourself, you hand over part of your harvest to the thief. In Proverbs chapter 21, verse 20, I also declared, "Precious treasure and oil are in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man devours them." What I meant to teach is that the disorganized not only lose, but also misuse the little they have. They always live on the edge, with no reserves, with no vision of the future. Therefore, God-fearing man, the discipline of organization is also an act of faith, for he who is faithful with little is found faithful for much. Finally, I want to expose three sisters who always walk together: negativity, murmuring, and an undisciplined tongue. In Proverbs chapter 15, verses 1 to 4, I said, "A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. The tongue of the wise dispenses knowledge, but the mouths of fools pour out folly. A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit." And in Proverbs chapter 13, verse 3, I declared, "He who guards his mouth preserves his life, but he who opens wide his lips comes to ruin." This means that murmuring is more than complaint. It is a continuous declaration of failure. And every negative word sows fear in you and in those who hear you. I want you to understand, wise man, that complaining steals the energy you should invest in honest work. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 10 to 12, I wrote, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This also is vanity. When goods increase, they increase who eat them, and what advantage has their owner but to see them with his eyes? Sweet is the sleep of a laborer, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of the rich will not let him sleep." What I meant to show is that murmuring is born from a restless mind, always comparing, always desiring, but true rest is found in honest work and gratitude for daily bread. God-fearing man, replace every word of complaint with praise. Trade the negative outlook for daily gratitude, and your tongue will be a tree of life in your house and in your work. For when the heart speaks hope, fear no longer finds echo within you. Therefore, praise the Lord by leaving your like on the video if you have not done so yet. Wise man, we have already spoken of laziness, procrastination, omission, and an undisciplined tongue. But there are still other sisters of fear that must be unmasked before you. I now want you to think with me about uncertainty, lying, and excuses. They walk side by side and form a tripod that undermines confidence. Uncertainty paralyzes because the heart fears making decisions. Lying creates false shortcuts that always end in ruin. And excuses serve as a veil to hide the lack of diligence. In Proverbs chapter 21, verses 5 to 8, I have already shown you that well thought out plans lead to plenty, but haste and fraud set traps. And in chapter 11, verse 1, I wrote, "A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." What I meant to teach is that the fear of deciding makes a man postpone endlessly. And when he finally acts, he often resorts to lies to justify himself. But the Lord does not bless deceit. The God-fearing man must cultivate the diligence of honesty. Even when he does not know the perfect answer, he must take the next step with clarity and truth. It is better to walk slowly on a clean path than to run on a road of deceit. Now also consider loneliness. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 to 12, I said, "Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if two lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken." What I meant to show is that loneliness opens breaches that fear fills. When a man walks alone, His mind becomes a battlefield where the sisters of fear find space to grow. But when he walks in fellowship, he has accountability partners. He has brothers who lift up his head and remind him of his promises. The fear of scarcity also needs to be confronted. Therefore, in Proverbs chapter 11, verses 24 and 25, I taught, "One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give, and only suffers want. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered." And in Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 1 and 2, I declared, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7, or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth." What I meant to teach here is that generosity is the most powerful antidote against the fear of lack. The wise man who learns to give does not fear tomorrow, because he trusts that the harvest will come. The God-fearing man who shares knows that provision does not run out, for the Lord multiplies in the measure of his faith and his giving. Let me explain more clearly. The fear of losing makes many men guard even the last grain. But when they guard it out of fear, that grain rots. But he who sows, even though it may seem like a loss at the moment, reaps multiplied in the right time. So it is with generosity. He who gives does not become poorer. He who withholds out of fear truly becomes poor. Therefore, I tell you, practice concrete acts of generosity. Not only great donations, but daily gestures. The time you share with your family, the counsel you offer to a brother, the bread you share with someone in need. Each act breaks the bond of scarcity and strengthens trust in the God who sustains all things. And now I want you to pause with me. Take a deep breath and ask the Lord to show you which of these little foxes you have let run free in your vineyard. It may be the uncertainty that hinders your decisions. It may be the omission that makes you lose opportunities. It may be the loneliness that weakens your courage. Or it may be the fear of scarcity that keeps you from sharing. Whatever it is, acknowledge it now before God. And then write in the comments which one challenges you most today. By writing, you will be declaring your decision to close that breach. And when you read the comment of another man, leave him a word of wisdom and encouragement. Thus we form a community that not only listens but practices, and each practice makes us stronger against fear. Rest and prosperity of the righteous. Wise man, we have walked a long road together. We have seen how fear is unmasked when wisdom is kept in the heart. We have understood that the finitude of life should not generate dread, but the fear of God, and that this fear is the foundation of every firm decision. We have learned that when the Lord's love seals the heart, no wave of fear can dominate the choices. We have also spoken of the mind and of identity, that your mind is a garden where each word turns into a seed, and that only he who watches what enters prospers. I reflected with you about your vineyard, your very life, and I showed you that you must not hand over your identity to the approval or the criticism of others. For he who lives on applause will never be free, and he who is consumed by booze will never have peace. What sustains you is what God has said about you, not what men murmur around you. I also showed you that prosperity is not the fruit of haste, but of well-laid plans, that it does not spring from deceit, but from honesty, that it is maintained through diligence in work, careful administration, and constancy in the small daily tasks. He who tills his land, even in silence, reaps bread. He who diversifies his seeds, even without certainties, reaps abundance. He who watches over the state of his flocks, even without immediate recognition, secures provision for himself and for his household. Such is prosperity with purpose, the kind that remains from generation to generation. And I also warned you about the sisters of fear, laziness, procrastination, omission, murmuring, lying, loneliness, and so many other little foxes that gnaw at what is blooming. Each of them is small at the beginning, but destructive at the end. You only overcome them when you recognize them and drive them out early, when you replace murmuring with gratitude, inertia with diligence, lying with honesty, loneliness with fellowship, and scarcity with generosity. The man who fears God learns that giving is the greatest proof of faith against the fear of tomorrow. There is yet a promise I must remind you of. My father David wrote in Psalms chapter 37, verses 23 to 26, "The steps of a man are ordered by the Lord. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholds him with his hand. I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. He is always merciful and lends, and his descendants are blessed." What this means is that your security is not in controlling every circumstance, but in the arm of the Lord, who establishes your steps and lifts up your life. If every word has found its place in your heart, do not let them die as an echo. Live from them. For prosperity that remains is born when the wise man not only hears but practices. Now, I want you to go to the comments and write the first action you will take in the next 24 hours against one of the sisters of fear. It may be a small step, but let it be real and firm. And share this video with someone who needs biblical courage. Thus, we multiply wisdom and build up men who fear God, who do not bow to the pressures of fear, but who flourish in the peace and prosperity that come from the Most High.